Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome to another video. It is the return of the Premier League. We are on the eve of the restart of the new Premier League campaign, and that can only mean one thing: the return of Premier League predictions for every match day possible for the brand new season. We've got some big games to kick off the season with this coming weekend, and of course this is the video where I go through the list of every single game from Friday through till Monday, and I talk about the games, and I also give my predictions on how I think the outcomes will go. Returning for a brand new season, I cannot wait to get stuck back into the action. Before we go any further though, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always and very greatly appreciated. And of course I encourage you as well to get involved in the comment section as well. I'm sure you have a lot of interesting thoughts, comments, opinions, but most of all of course predictions on how you think the games will be going. So do get involved down there. But without further ado, let's get on with the predictions. We're kicking things off with Friday night's game, and it is the Premier League new boys Burnley who are hosting Manchester City. The narrative here, if you're looking for one, or the kind of underlying story here, is that this is of course not only Burnley returning to the Premier League and having obviously their home game to kick things off, not only are they hosting the Premier League at Champions League, FA Cup, the treble-winning holders of last season in Manchester City. But, of course, between the two managers, this is Vincent Kompany against Pep Guardiola. Kompany, former player of Manchester City, of course. Kompany, former captain of Manchester City, playing under Pep Guardiola. Massive context here, massive story here developing. And I'm sure this one will be very intriguing to see on Friday night. Look, I think if there's ever going to be a time to play Manchester City, it's going to be right at the beginning of the season, where maybe they are not at 100%. We do tend to say that City tend to start the season off a little slower than they normally do, than they normally end the season, shall we say. And then they shift through the gears the later the season goes on. So this could be a very ideal time for Burnley to be facing Manchester City going forward. We saw that in the Community Shield last week. City weren't exactly at the peak of their powers just yet. We also know that Burnley have had pretty much an extra pre-season. They were the first team back in pre-season, so maybe that could play its part as well. Maybe they are a bit more fitter, a bit more sharper than what City are. But obviously time will tell on that one. Friday night, I'm sure Turf Moor is going to be rocking. I'm sure Turf Moor is going to be very excited to see the return of Premier League action. And it's going to be very intriguing, like I say, to see what Burnley side, what Man City side turn up in this one. As far as a prediction goes, look, beginning of the season is always going to be difficult to predict right off the bat. So this one's going to be very difficult. I am going to stick with the favourites though. I'm going to say City managed to edge this one. And I'm going to say that Pep Guardiola's side come out of this one as 2-1 winners. Saturday's first lunchtime game of the new season will see Arsenal take on Nottingham Forest at the Emirates. Arsenal, of course, looking to redeem themselves from obviously the end of the season last campaign, where of course things just fell away from them when the demand and the pressure got too much for them to handle. And of course, despite leading the Premier League title race for so long, ultimately crumbled and allowed Manchester City to leapfrog them and go on to secure their third Premier League title in a row. Against the Nottingham Forest side, who were very happy for them to survive in the Premier League for their first season back. They managed to keep their heads above water, and they had their home run in particular to thank for that. Big game this one, intriguing game. 12:30 kickoff is never going to be easy for the favourites. It never appears to be easy for the favourites anyway. But I think in this case, Arsenal looked sharp last week in the Community Shield. They looked pretty good for the most part. The last campaign, obviously they want a bit of revenge for obviously City, for obviously Forest ending completely their title run last campaign towards the end of last season. It was the game that ultimately saw Forest survive and Arsenal's title race end. Obviously, it's been a bit of a quiet summer for Forest in comparison to last summer. It'll be intriguing to see how Forest can do this season. It'll be interesting to see if Arsenal can go one step further this campaign, or whether they will again fall short of Pep Guardiola's side. A lot of unanswered questions there. Very intrigued to see how both of these two teams go about their seasons. I think it will start off with a win for Arsenal. Last season's home form was very, very good as far as what the Gunners are concerned, and I would imagine that would continue going forward. So I am going to say Arsenal win this one, and I'm going to say that the Gunners come out of this as 3-1 winners. The Vitality Stadium plays host to Bournemouth versus West Ham next on the agenda. Of course, a lot has changed at Bournemouth across the summer, including, of course, new manager coming in, as well as it has at West Ham. The Europa Conference League winners, of course, seen a lot of outgoings this summer, including their talisman Declan Rice, and there could be a few more on the horizon as well. Seems to be a bit of turmoil and a bit of chaos at West Ham in terms of that particular transfer issue going forward. Could be an ideal time to play West Ham. Could be an ideal time for Bournemouth to obviously get involved in playing West Ham right now. But at the same time, if you watched the Premier League predictions video for the brand new season that I put out, you'd also know that I believe Bournemouth to be one of the top contenders and my personal pick to go down for this season. I think West Ham might be in a little bit of trouble as well, but I think they should have enough about them to keep their heads above water. Potentially two relegation candidates, at least in my eyes. Very intriguing this one to see which one comes out on top, but I'm actually going to call it down the middle, and I'm going to say that Bournemouth and West Ham finish as a draw, and I'm going to say that this one will finish 1-1 come the final whistle. Next up, we're off to the Amex Stadium. It's Brighton taking on the Premier League new boys of Luton Town, and I, for one, am very interested to see Luton involved in the Premier League for the first time in a number of years. For Brighton, of course, they'll be looking to build upon their last campaign, which was very, very successful indeed. A sixth place finish and European football to come this season. Roberto De Zerbi deserves a massive amount of credit for managing to steer the ship known as Brighton towards European football and towards a very high, very respectable, and some would say overachieving finish, despite obviously suffering through a lot of turmoil and a lot of change. Last season did the Seagulls, including, of course, a number of players leaving in pre-season. Their manager, and of course a lot of their staff, and including their manager, of course, in Graham Potter, leaving the club partway through the campaign. De Zerbi came in, steadied the ship, and of course managed to guide them towards a fantastic sixth place finish that I'm sure they're looking towards as a platform for them to build upon for this campaign. As far as what Luton are concerned, in the Championship last campaign, incredible to do what they did and get out of there, and obviously get promoted to the top flight division for the first time in a number of years. They'll be looking to enjoy the occasion whilst they're back. They'll be trying to keep their heads above water as an initial sort of objective, but of course I think it might be a big uphill struggle, but they'll enjoy it whilst it is here, and I think kicking things off against Brighton will be a very good test and a very good indicator of things to come as far as what both sides are concerned. As far as a prediction goes, look, Brighton go into this one as the favourites. Like I say, it's always difficult to predict the opening day of the season, so I'm going to have to just stick with the favourites in this one, and I'm going to say that Brighton come out of this one as 2-1 winners. Next, off to Goodison Park, it is Everton against Fulham. A Premier League classic, this one. A Premier League classic game to kick off the season for both of these clubs. Sean Dyche against Marco Silva. Big game indeed. I think both of these sides overall will be completely safe. I can't see them being involved in any sort of relegation battle, but I can't see them pulling up any trees either in terms of maybe challenging for some form of European football this season. Obviously, as we know, Everton have survived by the skin of their teeth these past couple of years, whilst Fulham were welcome back to the Premier League with a comfortable and safe and sound mid-table finish. As far as this game goes, I don't think we're gonna be seeing anything exciting from both of these sides, particularly not Everton. In terms of obviously football, I think their football will be difficult to watch, but at the same time, I think it will be effective in terms of securing results when it needs to. As far as what Fulham go, again, a bit of chaos in terms of certain players, and big players at that may or may not be on board with the club right now. Looking at you, Alexander Mitrovic in particular. But of course, they did have capabilities last season that saw them manage to survive without Mitrovic for the most part. So they do have other players. It's not as if they're a one-man team, but he is a big target, and he is obviously a big name player in that squad. Could be a difficult game for both sides. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw here. I don't think it will be a high-scoring affair by any means. I'm going to go 1-1 and the points to be shared. Next up, we're off to Bramall Lane. It is Sheffield United against Crystal Palace. And again, it is the third of the 3 Premier League new teams in this list to come up right now. Sheffield United, of course, back in England's top flight division. Fantastic championship season. Last campaign to, of course, obtain promotion, but it is going to be very difficult for them to stay up, like I said in the Premier League predictions video that I did. Do go and check that out. Big game. Intriguing game. Of course, they're coming up against Crystal Palace side, who last season struggled for a little bit in the second half of the season under Patrick Vieira, but then when Roy Hodgson came in and returned to Selhurst Park, of course, the goals started flowing. That winning feeling came back to Crystal Palace, and they managed to safely and soundly secure their Premier League status for another season. And again, as I said in my Premier League predictions video, I don't see it changing for Crystal Palace. I see pretty much the same as last season coming in. I see a safe and sound, middle-of-the-road kind of season in which Palace are safely secured in that mid-table sort of spots. Sheffield United, on the other hand, I do fear relegation for them. They may start the season off well, and a draw isn't out of the realms of possibility, but I am going to go with the favourites. I'm leaning more towards the favourites here in Crystal Palace, and I'm going to say that Palace get a 2-1 victory in this one in the away side's favour. 3 points to Roy Hodgson's side. Next up, Saturday's first evening clash of the brand new season will see St James's Park absolutely buzzing for the hosting of Aston Villa as Newcastle take on Aston Villa. Eddie Howe versus Unai Emery, 2 sides that overachieved massively last season. Newcastle, who finished in the top 4 and have Champions League football to look forward to this season, against Unai Emery's Aston Villa, who of course he took charge part way through the season and managed to guide Villa towards a 7th place finish. They will have Europa Conference League football to welcome to Villa Park this season. 2 big clubs showing big ambition, showing big impact in the transfer windows, and obviously their long-term ambitions and long-term projects, and 2 sides that are going to be battling it out on Saturday night for all 3 points to kick off their new seasons. Look, if their pre-season game was anything to go by, which, let's face it, I don't really put a lot of stock in pre-season, but if there was anything to go by on this one occasion, we could be in for a treat. These 2 teams battled to a 3-3 draw in pre-season, so anything like that will make for interesting and great viewing as a neutral spectator on this. I'm very intrigued to see how both sides will continue to progress and continue to perform across this campaign, having used last season as a bit of a platform to build upon. I think both sides have had pretty good transfer windows, and I'm looking forward to seeing how both of these sides can take that next step in their development. I think we're going to be in for an interesting game, and a very intriguing game at that. So I'm going to call it down the middle. I can't really separate the 2 right now. I'm going to say that this game will end 2-2 come the final whistle. Next up, 2 teams with big development and will be very intriguing to watch across this campaign, and is going to be battling it out in Sunday's games. Brentford are taking on Tottenham. Big intrigue in this one. Brentford, it'll be interesting to see how they cope in the first half of the season without the, of course, big and influential Ivan Toney within their ranks. Of course, Toney is banned from the first half of this season pretty much. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope without him. If you know Thomas Frank, they will probably have a plan in mind, and they probably got a player to cover. They've probably got some sort of game plan to execute, but it'll be interesting to still see how they manage to cope without his goals and without his influence that he has other than goals across that team in terms of leading from the front, pressing from the front, and I'm very intrigued to see how Thomas Frank can build upon Brentford's season in which they finished 9th in the last campaign, whilst Tottenham, of course, a lot of questions over how they're going to be doing, whether Harry Kane will be in the squad, whether Harry Kane will be there at the end of the transfer window. Does Ange Postecoglou come in and hit the ground running? Does it take him some time to get used to the Premier League, used to his squad, and for the squad that has changed a lot over the summer to, of course, adapt to his way of playing and to the Premier League itself and everything else that goes along with that? Very, very big questions to be asked of both sides. But I'm going to predict a very intriguing game. I think Tottenham this season will be very interesting and exciting to watch. In terms of, I think they will score plenty of goals in the way that they play, but I also think the way they play will also make them leak plenty of goals. And as we know, Brentford can take advantage of that and do have players that can damage you, particularly on the counter-attack, which I think will be very effective in this game against a high-pressing Tottenham side. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to split it down the middle. This game could genuinely go any which way. But I'm going to call it down the middle, I'm going to say a draw, and I'm going to say that Tottenham and Brentford finish 2-2 at the end of the game. For the penultimate game on this list, we're going to jump a little bit ahead to Monday night's game. The first Monday night football of the brand new season will come from Old Trafford, and we'll see Manchester United take on Wolves. Manchester United, of course, who have enjoyed a pretty decent pre-season in all honesty, and I hate to say that as obviously a Liverpool fan and a rival fan, but that is the honest opinion that I will always give. United have enjoyed a pretty decent pre-season in which they've acquired a few very good and seemingly smart additions to their squad, and they'll be looking to build upon their third place finish last season and maybe look to close the gap on the likes of Arsenal and Manchester City at the top of the table under Erik ten Hag, who of course endured a very, again, surprising, with all due respect, season in which they massively overachieved in a lot of people's eyes, including my own, of course. No one was expecting them to get to 2 finals, let alone win 1 and win a trophy, and no one was expecting them to get Champions League football, which, of course, everything I just said there, they managed to do. So they'll be looking to build upon that season and use that as a platform to, obviously, like I say, bridge the gap on the likes of Arsenal and City above them. As for Wolves, season has been thrown into chaos already before a ball has even been kicked. Julian Lopetegui has of course left the side. He's been replaced by Gary O'Neill. Of course, O'Neill took charge of Bournemouth last campaign, led them to safety, so it seems a pretty smart move right off the bat in certain aspects, in that kind of aspect. But obviously, not having had a pre-season to work with these players, not having had a pre-season to fully get used to Wolves and get used to the side, and of course with a lot of issues in terms of obviously recruitment and their transfers, it begs the question of how prepared are Wolves for this season. I think it will be something that United will manage to take advantage of. I'm going to say that United win this game, and I'm going to say they do it pretty comfortably as well. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win in favour of the Red Devils. And finally, in what I believe to be the main event and the biggest game of this opening round of Premier League fixtures, we are at Stamford Bridge Sunday afternoon for Chelsea against Liverpool. And it's slightly ironic that I say main event because, as we know, the past few occasions that these two teams have met, they've been draws. Nothing has managed to separate these two sides. I think in the last 4 games between these two, or last 6 games, 7 games, I think there's been draws between them. There was the 2-0 draws in the Premier League last season. The season before that, there was 2-0 draws in both of the cup finals, of course, both being won on penalties by Liverpool. I think there was like a 2-2 draw in amongst them. They are entertaining 0-0 draws and draws at that these two teams endure, but we would like to see a winner at some point. Maybe on Sunday might be the day that finally the streak of draws ends. Either way, it's going to be very intriguing. These two teams have got a lot of question marks above their heads going into the new season. Can Chelsea cope with such a young and inexperienced side? How will Mauricio Pochettino take to managing Chelsea, obviously having crossed that Tottenham to Chelsea divide, from obviously formerly managing Spurs to now managing Chelsea? How will he do? Obviously on Liverpool's side of things, how will the impact of the loss of certain key players and big name players and obviously experienced players at that take its toll? Who will fit in that number 6 role? How will they line up this season? Will Trent be a right back or will he be a midfielder? How will Liverpool's attack cope and will they go stronger this season? There's a lot of question marks over both of these sides going forward into this season that we hope to get some sort of, not all the answers obviously right off the bat, but some sort of understanding as to where the answers may lead to across this campaign. Very intriguing stuff to watch and unfold before our very eyes on Sunday. A game that, despite the fact of my optimism of maybe the streak of draws ending, I can only see it ending one way, and that is actually a draw. So get ready for another draw on Sunday. As much as I want to say Liverpool will win this game, and of course I'll back my team a lot, I've got to be realistic, I've got to be honest, and I've got to say that I believe this game will end 1-1 come the final whistle. But as I always say, these are the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of all of the games that are coming up in the opening weekend of Premier League football as it is set to restart and kick off once again, unravelling a new chapter in England's top flight division? What are your own thoughts, your comments, opinions, but most of all, of course, what are your predictions on all of the games coming up in game week 1 of the brand new Premier League season? Would love to hear and read them all down below in the comment section. I'm sure it'll all make for great and interesting reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things always incredibly greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, Premier League predictions video, should I say. And I'll see you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Have a good day.